chapter 18. Isaiah's prophecies in chapter 18 seem to be most specific to his time, and they seem to be a clear warning to people to put their faith in the Lord, not in other people to guide them. Isaiah reminds us to seek the Savior at every step so that he can help us. In verse number 1, he says, "Moreover, the voice of the Lord said unto me, Take thee a great roll and write in it with a man's pen concerning Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz." The Lord tells Isaiah to take a large scroll of parchment and write in it about Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz. Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz, which means quick to the plunder and swift to the spoil, is a direct reference to the way that Assyria will attack and destroy Judah. The spoils of war are the things that have been plundered by invading armies when they attack. It is a prophecy that tells the people of King Ahaz what will happen to them when their ruler goes against the words of the Lord. To understand this passage better, we need a little context to the time. Ahaz, the king of Judah, had ignored Isaiah's warnings and advice from God and gone ahead with his initial plans of forming an alliance with Assyria to avoid the attack from Syria and Samaria. In addition to this, Israel was also going through a period of turning away from God or apostasy. God wanted his people to know what would happen to them if they continued ignoring and going against his advice and words, and he sent word to the people to warn them of the forthcoming invasion of Assyria. Isaiah was the prophet who preached to both the Israelites and to the people of Judah. Verse number 2, "And I looked unto me faithful witnesses to record, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jebekiah." Isaiah asked two witnesses to sign on his writing of the prophecy because it was how prophecies had to be recorded according to the law of Moses. It's interesting to note that they had witnesses who could confirm the prophecy had been made when the events talked about happened. Also, these witnesses were people who were known in the land. They were people of standing. So a prophecy that is supported by other well-known people is given more importance than one that is not. And in verse number 3, "And I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. And then said the Lord to me, Call his name Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz." Here Isaiah shares that he went to his wife, and his wife bore him a son, whom the Lord told Isaiah to call Maher-shalal-Hash-Baz. In verse number 4, "For behold, the child shall not have knowledge to cry, My father and my mother, before the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria. And before the child is old enough to speak, the Assyrian king would have conquered and taken captive Syria and Samaria, which is the kingdom of northern Israel." Verse number 5, "The Lord spake also unto me, saying, Forasmuch as his people refuseth the waters of Shiloah that go softly, and rejoice in Rezin and Remaliah's son, now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth upon them the waters of the river strong and many, even the king of Assyria and all his glory, and he shall come up over all his channels and go over all his banks." So in verses 6 and 7, Isaiah symbolically talks of the Savior as flowing water that is necessary for our lives, both spiritually and physically. And he says that when the Lord spoke to him, saying that as much as the people of Israel turn away from the word of the Lord and rejoice in the leadership of their rulers in Syria and Samaria, he will bring upon those people the full power of the river in full flood, where it overflows its banks, floods the entire lands, and kills and destroys everything. In verse 7, the Lord describes his judgment like the mighty river in full flood. Compare this to the gentle flow of the Shiloah river. And then verse number 8, "And he shall pass through Judah, he shall overflow and go over, he shall reach even to the neck, and the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel." Isaiah describes the Assyrians like some kind of gigantic bird, stretching out its wings and trying to cover or take over the entire land. Again, historical context is needed to understand this line. After King Ahaz died, his son King Hezekiah, came to the throne of Judah, and he was a righteous king. He refused to honor the deals that his father had made with Assyria, and this resulted in Assyria going to war with and destroying many cities in Judah. But they were unable to conquer Jerusalem because the Lord was with them. Verse number 9, "Associate yourselves, O ye people, and ye shall be broken in pieces. And give ear, all ye of far countries. Gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Gird yourself, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Isaiah warns all the countries that may associate with Assyria that they will be broken. He says, "Listen, all you people from faraway places. If you try to fight with Judah, you will be broken. If you arm yourself with weapons and seek to fight and destroy us, you will be broken." Verse number 10. "Take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. Speak the word, and it shall not stand, for God is with us. Even if you all work together, you take sides against us, you still will not be able to do anything against us. Even if you speak against us, you won't be believed, because God is with us." Verse number 11. "For the Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand, and instructed that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying, For the Lord spoke to me clearly and warned me not to be afraid, not to say the things that people want to hear, but to speak the truth and to teach the truth and only the truth." Verse number 12. "Say ye not a confederacy to all whom this people shall say a confederacy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid." Confusing again. Don't say they have ganged up against us, and don't listen to other people who may be saying wrong things. Don't get scared by what other people are saying. Trust and believe that the Lord will be there for you, and he will be there. Verse number 13. "Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, let him be your dread. Worship the Lord with all your faith and heart, and let him be your fear and your dread. Don't be afraid of anyone else. Trust, look up to and follow the Lord, and let him lead, guide you, and comfort you." The phrase "sanctify the Lord of hosts himself" translates from Hebrew as "let the Lord be your temple." So let the Lord be your temple. Look to him for guidance. Look to him as your guiding point to walk through life. Verse number 14. "And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, for a gin and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem." If you do this, if you turn to him and look to him, he will be a sanctuary to you. But to those who don't do this, who don't follow his words, who don't heed his advice and turn to him, to those he will be a stumbling block and a trap. In verse 15, "And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. And many of the people of Judah and Jerusalem who turn away from the Lord will stumble, fall, and be captured." In verse number 16, he says, "Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples." The Lord tells Isaiah once he is finished to roll up, tie, and seal his prophecy, symbolically meaning that the prophecy, once recorded, can stand testament on the day of judgment when the Lord tried to warn and save his people, but they turned against him. Verse number 17, "And I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him." Isaiah says that he will hopefully and patiently wait for the Lord until the day he appears, even though it looks like he's not appearing to the people of Jacob right now. In verse number 18, "Behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion." Isaiah tells us that the names of himself and his children who the Lord has given him are signs from God that testify of all the things that will happen to the house of Israel. Because they are signs, because their names are symbolic of God's words to his people. The name Isaiah means Jehovah as salvation. Isaiah's first son's name was Sher Jashub, which means the remnant shall return, which is talking about the remaining tribes of Israel, the remaining descendants of the tribes of Israel, who the Lord will return back to the promised land eventually. And his younger son, Meher Shalal Hashbaz, meaning quick to plunder and swift to spoil. Verse number 19, "And when they shall say unto you, Seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and mutter. Should not a people seek unto their God for the living to hear from the dead? And when people tell you to go look for the soothsayers and the witches and the fortune tellers to warn you and to warn them of their future, instead turn to God and ask him to help you, to guide you, for only he knows what has been and what will be in the future." Verse number 20, "To the law and to the testimony, and if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them." If the people you're seeking advice from are not guiding you the right way, in the way of God, in the way of his commandments, and his words that you hear from the prophets or from the scriptures, then they do not have the light of God in them. If there is no light of God in them, they're not people of God. They're not real teachers who seek to serve you and other people through God, but rather ones who seek their own agendas first and roam the land seeking ways to do so, to seek their own agendas through other people. Verse number 21. And they shall pass through it, hardly bestead and hungry. And it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves, they shall worry and curse their king and their God and look upwards. And when these fortune tellers don't achieve their own agendas or their personal successes, they feel angry, they feel insecure and desperate, and they blame God for their failure to succeed. Verse number 22. And they shall look upon the earth and behold trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and shall be driven to darkness. And they then look around themselves and they see nothing but trouble and fear and darkness, because that is how they feel internally. And these emotions that they're feeling internally, they lead them to temptation and to commit wickedness. This whole chapter 18, is a warning to Isaiah's readers to be careful about whom they put their faith in, encouraging their readers, his readers, to turn to God, to put their faith in God, to let him guide them and lead them,